white and bluegrass.
Kentucky lawmakers have reached the conclusion of their work on the state's housing task force. The group was a starting point for lawmakers to look into the issue, understand it, and hear from all the stakeholders about possible solutions. The Kentucky Housing Corporation says today the state is 206,000 housing units short.
There are folks who can't move up from their starter home because there's not a home that they can afford to buy. There's folks who 5 years ago could have become a home buyer in Kentucky, and they cannot afford, a home now.
The final report details many of the findings about how Kentucky got into the crisis and a few proposed solutions that lawmakers were pitched, ranging from zoning incentives, revolving loan pools, and a state housing tax credit. Representative Timoney, I'll go ahead and start the segment with you here. One of the things that Ms. Smith there mentioned to me about the state of our current crisis is the fact that home building has not caught up to the levels that it was pre-2008. Does that shock you?
It does. A little bit. I know we're going to build our way out of this problem. Like, that's the answer. We're going to have to build our way out of it. So we're going to have to, rely heavily on the schools and their vocational programs to be graduating students through their electricians that are HVAC, that are construction related. We're going to have to really have tough conversations, particularly here in Lexington, about the urban service area. Talk about a lightning rod issue. There's land, and we have a system that doesn't allow it to be built on, and for good reasons and for some other reasons that we need to probably have conversations about. But I think that we're in an odd time because I believe that the shortage of materials that was during the pandemic. It was building materials, it was concrete, it was steel, all of those expenses that were coming from other places that were so expensive. But those costs are now kind of not relatively gone back to where they were, but they're definitely a lot lower than they were during the pandemic. Yet the costs are still so high, and I think that that's one of the things that we have to take a real close look at.
As you both mentioned, you're Lexington guys. You've seen this issue a lot more firsthand. What are some of the contributing issues that you're seeing from people that are struggling right now to get into homes?
I think certainly the urban service boundary and how we have viewed land use in Fayette County. I think that another thing that I've heard recently is that after the DNC, and I wasn't aware of this, but that large corporations are buying up large swaths of property throughout various communities around the country and in Fayette County, and consequently that's driving up prices on the available housing that we have, the housing stock. So those are all things I think we need to take into consideration. I think Mr. Timoney's point about Killian's point about the cost of materials and what happened during the COVID situation and how all that affected the economy. So the economy is playing a role in this. But the thing that I think is really problematic is that we have young people that we've educated in our community, we've made an investment in, and those children have to go somewhere else. That's problematic, that we're not able to reap the benefit, get the return on the investment that we've made in our young people because of housing.
The legislature has a menu of options in front of them now. I mentioned some of them there, and I don't want to go too deep in the weeds of them because I think they all kind of would glaze eyeballs a little bit. But the one I keep hearing about is a state-level tax credit, that for every dollar that's invested in a new property, they would get a little bit of something back. There's something like that on the federal level, and that Kentucky is in a smaller number of states that doesn't have something like this. Among those menu of options, as I'm talking about, what do you think would be the likely place for the legislature to start?
Well, I do think that tax credits that they have paved the way for a lot of different things in Kentucky, and those are good things. So, however, we have this ongoing battle about lowering the income tax. Currently it will be dropped to 3.5 in January. It hit the triggers. So, any tax credit is going to be even more expensive than it was if that is our main objective. So I think that the tax credits make sense. But at the same time, I also know where some of the problems will come from that.
Any other solutions you'd want to throw out there?
I think that's a good one, but I think that one of the problems we've got is that once the dominoes start to fall, they start to fall, and it starts to create a ripple effect in the pool of tranquility of housing. And what happens is that it starts to affect everything and everybody. So we have started those dominoes to falling, and consequently, as a result of that, this is where we find ourselves. Right. And it's going to be difficult for us to get out of this.